Hi, my name is Jared Levin, and this is my final project for climate change that we've been working on. Now, a little pre-context before we get into this. I live in Georgia, and Georgia is a big farming state, so agriculture is very important to us. So I will be covering most of that, and let's get into it. Introduction. Over this presentation, I will be covering the complete context of climate change. There are many things that involve climate change, such as forcing factors, environmental influence, and even geoengineering actions, as well as many other things. There's many things that go into climate change. So, climate change is a very serious issue that a lot of people now take lightly. Uh, it's not a political thing. I don't know why people try to make it like that. It's not. It's a real issue that we need to work on. So I hope after this presentation, you will see the future issue, that you will see the issue at hand and see how it could seriously affect our futures and understand the steps to take to go forward. Now, to begin, some forcing agents for climate. Uh, I'd like to go over a few of the following terms. The terms are climate change, feedback, and forcings. Forcing. Forcing, a climate forcing is an energy imbalance imposed on the climate system either externally or by human activities. Now, these things could be such as solar energy output, volcanic emissions, deliberate land modification, which obviously is construction and all that kind of stuff. The deforestation probably be a part of that too, which is also a big area issue in my area. There's a lot of deforestation going around, and we all know the main area in the Amazon. Deforestation is a really big issue over there. Um, Another one, anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases. That's a common one we all know. Climate change. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures. Now, over the past, I think it's 100, not quite 100 years, actually probably more, temperature has almost almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that may not seem like a lot, but it is a lot, considering the amount of damage it's doing to the polar ice caps and uh, causing serious damage to life there. Uh, these shifts may be natural, or long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, but since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change. We all know that. Okay, we all affect climate change by the actions we take, the burning of fossil fuels, the deforestation, messing with land, um, just and nuclear power plant. It's just all the stuff that we put into the air that we do to our planet. We're causing this, and people need to understand that. Feedback. In climate change, a feedback loop is something that speeds up or slows down a warming trend. A positive feedback accelerates a temperature rise, whereas a negative feedback slows it down. So there's that. Let's get into some historical context of climate change. Get that out of the way. One of the biggest climate change events in history was the extinction of the dinosaurs. Now, this caused a kind of mini ice age because of all the ash and stuff that accumulated in the air and blocked out the sun, basically, and everything just basically froze over and died, and just there was no life whatsoever because there was no sunlight. It had just complete devastation. This is the biggest event in our history, yet people like to say that it isn't real either, but it's not important. Now, another one, the Little Ice Age, which occurred between 1303 and 1850. It's obviously not as big as the Big Ice Age, but still holds a great importance for climate change. My most recent data that I've found, uh, most recent data, climate change, has shown over the last century, the Earth's average surface temperature has increased by 1 degree Fahrenheit. 1 degree. Now, that may not seem like a lot to you, but if you look out what's happening to the damn world, you'll see that crap's hitting the fan. The amount of icebergs that are melting and the rise in temperatures that we've had recently, and the colder winters that we've had. In Georgia, we had 3 whole weeks where it was above 100 degrees, and that is it's rare for our area. I mean, we get hot temperatures, but not for that consistent long. And which to most may not seem like a big deal, but is a huge deal. And the warmer it gets, the greater the consequences. It may not hit you right away, but they're going to hit you eventually. Now, as you can see in this graph, from 1880, the steady rise, it seemed to have went back down once the 1900s hit, but slowly began to rise, and about at the time of World War II, you could start to see almost a steady pace. But right when it hits back up to 1980, start of the modern era, kind of, in a way, you can see it just leaps, just goes straight up. Yeah, just a great climb. Next, regional and environmental influence. When it comes to the issues with climate change in my area, I can think of 2 things right away. First off is flooding and weather disasters. Now, like I said before, we are an agricultural state, Georgia is, and we rely on our crops for a lot of things, for jobs and for food supply. Uh, these disasters are serious problems for agriculture. Like if a hurricane hits and knocks away all the crops, or flooding happens and the crops get too overwatered and they die and they drown. It has caused us to restart, and that's not cheap. It costs a lot of money to do all that. Um, Also, I work at a fish farm, and if flooding like that happens, um, it's actually more harmful than you would think. Okay, and severe storms can tear up crops and cause serious damage to the environment, leaving farmers to halt production and clean up the aftermath. Another issue we deal with is drought, which would seriously affect me at my job, because we have to pay a crap ton of money to fill up our ponds to hold the fish in, and as well as for crops. Crops need water, and water is not cheap. This year we saw very high temperatures and lots of days without rain, which made growing crops hard. It also affected the ponds and lakes, causing them to drain quite a bit. Excuse me. All right. Number 6, the socio-economic impact. Now, when thinking about how climate change would affect my area, I know the first 2 things that come to mind. I work at a fish farm, so if global temperatures were to rise or decrease, it would be dangerous for the fish, as well as the crops and everything. Same thing when it comes to farming. Like I said in the previous thing. If the global temperature increases or decreases, it'll make farming very hard and cause crops to die out. They're just extremely important for us, and if global temperatures rise, it can cause people not to want to work. If temperatures get too high, it causes unsafe working conditions. People can get heat strokes, or they mainly just heat strokes or heart attacks. You can't work in those conditions. There's just only so much you can do. Okay, number 7. All right. possible mitigation and geoengineering actions. Since I live in an agricultural community, I realize the perfect mitigation strategy would be climate smart agriculture. Now, what is this, you may ask? Well, climate smart practices such as locally practiced conservation agriculture aim at conserving soil moisture, retaining crop residues for soil fertility, disturbing the soil as minimally as possible, and diversifying through rotation or intercropping. Now, this is extremely important, and I don't know many people who do it in my area, but I know people who do it in other places, and they've said it's been a real good thing. Now, another technique that I think would be great for my area is uniforestation, not deforestation. We don't need to get rid of the trees. Trees are important. Uh, they're just important for life, for everything. We have a lot of areas with dead and cut down trees that can be reforested. It would really help the landscape because there's a lot of dead. There's a lot of dead landscape, and it would just make it look a lot nicer. It doesn't matter what trees, and all of it's perfect farmland as well. Let's go to future outlook for the area. Looking forward towards the future, it is hard to predict what will happen with climate change, but we have a pretty good understanding. All I can really say is, if we keep heading in the direction we're going, it will surely have serious consequences. If the temperature continues to rise the way it does, I see it having serious consequences on the farming community. Or, the off chance the temperature begins to decrease, it'll make growing crops very hard in my area. Cold weather and crops obviously do not mix. Summary and conclusion. So as you can see in my area, agriculture is very important. Our crops are the lifeblood of our land, as well as many other people in the United States. The United States is a farming country. We rely on our farms to bring us food and raise livestock for other stuff. Climate plays a big role in whether or not we're able to produce the crops we need. Climate change plays a huge role in all our lives. It doesn't just have to do with farming. It has to do with the air we breathe. It has to do with the weather. Tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes. All of this is in part with climate change. One reaction leads to another reaction. It is a chain reaction. Temperatures rise, icebergs melt, water temperature gets colder, sea levels rise, flooding happens, crops die out, people lose their homes, people lose their lives, property damage, land damage, billions of dollars having to be spent rebuilding. We don't need that, okay? We don't need that in our lives. We need to come together and try to limit the amount of crap that we're putting into our atmosphere and just do our part to decrease our carbon footprint. Because at the rate we're going, it's not going well. It's not. I don't understand how people don't see it, but they need to. Who knows what the world will be like if we keep heading in the direction we're going. We can all just try to make it a healthy planet and do our best to keep it that way. These are my 3 sources. Thank you.